It'll make you get up and get out. You can't have no fun with no fun with it. Yes. Oh,
Okay, welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this typical winter day. Pleasant, it's a little chilly, but it's February, it's supposed to be chilly. And we did not get the freezing rain that we were supposed to get. Is that helping?
yeah.
Okay. That is simple, that can either turn it on or turn it off, but I like the headphones better. We're working on, and the headphones are pretty cheap, and I can buy multiple copies, so we can have as many as we want, if I can get Emerson to show me how to work them. Let's see, announcement. Mike is at Garst Museum. They're rearranging or cleaning or doing something, but he printed up our bulletins for us and said he wouldn't be here today. So, I told you, I've been telling you for like 3 weeks that we're going to do a little history lesson comparing the period of 1930 to 1940 in Nazi Germany with what's going on here. But things keep happening that crowd into my consciousness, and I just can't go back and do something that's like book learning. So what we're going to do today is, this is 3 weeks, and this is Meet the Press, and it's a meat grinder, and that's just kind of typical of what's going on. What we're going to discuss today is something called malignant narcissism. Narcissism is somebody who pays attention only to themselves and only does things that is important to them. And we'll expand on that, and we'll go through. Basically, I've just got a list of things that have happened in the last 2 weeks, which have been pretty astounding all the way through. So that's what we're going to do. Prelude. Come Christians, join to sing.
Kirkman, Ohio, the Ohio State alma mater, so
That's what I played.
that's what that tune is, yeah.
Perfect.
Ohio.
Perfect.
I thought it was
Well, it might be both. It's really nice, whatever it is, and we really appreciate having music.
I didn't hit too many sour notes.
No, you didn't hit hardly any sour notes, particularly by somebody who's musically tone deaf like me. Wouldn't know anyway. All right, chalice lighting. Oh, let's go through a few of these. I just had a whole bunch of slides because they kept hitting me. Consumer Protection Bureau. It's been canceled, shut down. It won't be in existence anymore. Department of Education, shut down. Won't be in existence anymore. USAID, this is the one we're going to talk about. Shut down. There's like 5,000, actually there's like 10 or 15,000 people that work for it. 5,000 of them are overseas with no money, no way to get home. They're just abandoned overseas.
Didn't they kind of pause that?
What's
Didn't
that?
they kind of pause it?
He said he paused it, but if you watch the news,
Well, what's the news?
the people that are there say they can't get the money and they can't get the materials. We'll just kind of go as we go along here. The farmers are going to be a little upset, the farmers who voted for Trump, because all of the food that goes to foreign countries is bought from American farmers. That food is sitting at the port in Houston, New Orleans, and on the East Coast. It's just sitting there because nobody has the authority to move it. Even though the Secretary of State said, "Oh no, we're gonna provide humanitarian assistance," those are just words. They've already stopped. The rule went out to stop any kind of funding and payment. Shippers aren't going to pick something up and move it without proof that they're going to be paid. So the soybeans, the corn, the rice, that stuff is just sitting there in containers on the hot docks, basically going bad. It's going to spoil as it sits there. And that's just the beginning of it. And this was the one that just frosted my toast. Does anybody recognize what this is? He also fired all the trustees for the Kennedy Center and appointed himself chairman of the board. Appointed himself chairman. This would be funny if it wasn't so serious. And he put this picture on his webpage. He is now the conductor of the Kennedy Symphony. He's dressed up in conductor's clothes. Yes, he's dressed up in conductor's clothes, and he's going to conduct the symphony to make the Kennedy Center great again. Are you getting a clue of what malignant narcissism is? So anyway, may your call be awakened. We come to religious community from many paths with diverse needs. If you have come here seeking comfort, may your pain be soothed. If you have come here looking for answers, may you find new questions. If you have come here seeking purpose, may your call be awakened. If you have come here hoping to build a new way, may the path open before you. Those words are by Michelle LaGrave. Our opening hymn is 348, Guide My Feet. guide my feet, and boy, we need that. All right, our affirmation, and I apologize, every time I print this, I forget to look, and they always have the media information direction at the beginning. I usually try to scratch that out, but I missed it this time. Great mystery which grounds and surround us, small spark of life and possibility that lives within us even when all else is crumbling to dust. Be with us in our confusion, fear, and even despair. Lead us to navigate them as slowly as possible. Resist the impulse to soothe, to blame, to seek things that feel better than the hurt and the heaviness, but which ultimately leave us isolated or complacent or too suspicious of each other. Let us not flee from our grief, but allow our hearts to be broken open again and again, grieving for all that has already been lost and all that is threatened now. Spirit of love, life, and regeneration, help us to feel the wisdom in our bodies, even with so much going so wrong. Our hearts beat with gratitude for blessings, for beauty and joy stubbornly breaking through, for the compassionate companionship of community, which welcomes all that we bring with us in these times and doesn't ask us to be smaller than we really are. For solidarity and mutual aid, for the trees and the wind and the stars, their cosmic witness soothing our animal souls, reminding us of the deep impermanence and the deep interconnectedness of all things. Spirit of transformation, may our hearts break open and stretch out to join with the hearts of others who yearn for a freer world, each heart a building block of a better society, each life lived for hope and resistance, a prayer for a nobler world. Amen and blessed be. Our children's story is Don't Be a Sucker. This is a 1947 propaganda film put out by the War Department. Propaganda doesn't necessarily have to be anti-something, it can also be for something. So this is our War Department in 1947 trying to make us a better country. What?
Yeah, what was that?
That is a film put out by the War Department in 1947, after the war. It is a woke film trying to awaken people to what these people are saying, and they were saying the same thing then. What did he say? This country would be better off without. without what? Without aliens and foreigners and immigrants. And in 1947, they threw in without Negroes. They didn't want, this is the era, if you remember, after World War II, there's a show on PBS called The Great Migration. Blacks from the South, suffering from discrimination, moved in droves up to the north. Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, Harlem, and New York, all these areas were basically unsettled until the 40s, the late 30s and 40s, when blacks finally said, we're not going to live as sharecroppers, as pseudo-slaves in the South. We're going to move to the North where we can have jobs and have our own lives and our own businesses and our own homes. But what happened when they moved in? If you're familiar with the history of Boston, the Italians in Boston were upset because new people were moving in and taking their jobs. So there was the Great Migration was opposed by the white people who were there, just like the white people now are upset because they are losing the majority in the country. Where was I going with this? Oh, the other thing they were against was Catholics. You remember, and you probably don't, if you studied any history, there used to be a thing about papism, and Catholics were an anathema, and everybody was against the Catholics. Now, that's kind of passed through. But if you look at American history, when the Irish came, everybody was against the Irish. No dogs or Irish allowed used to be a common sign on bars. When the Chinese came and helped build the railroads and connect the Western United States with the Eastern United States, there were laws passed that no more Chinese could immigrate to the United States. Every group that has come has been shunned. The Italians were shunned. They were called Dagos and Wops. Every group has come and been discriminated against until they finally made their way to the Americas and became at home here. The amazing thing is to me that every group has been discriminated against, and what do? As soon as they become the majority, they turn around and discriminate against other people. Everyone has such a short memory, and I don't have a cure for that. So, and then the last thing he got to was the Freemasons, secret societies. They used to rail against Freemasons and the secret societies, which is kind of funny because almost everybody in the Freemasons was a Catholic. It's kind of like the D-Malays, which is a youth group for kids. I was in the D-Malay and I was a Protestant, but it was set up by the Catholic Church and run by the Catholic Church. So it's just another outreach that they have. But that's where everybody is suspicious of somebody in another tribe, and everybody pushes against that. But this film was made by the government to try and get people not to do that. What are we seeing now? The exact opposite. We are seeing the government saying, we want to discriminate. They don't call it discrimination. In fact, that is the curious twisting of language, is they say, we're not going to discriminate because everybody is treated equal. But they just have started a new agency to stop discrimination against Christians. A new agency has been appointed, and do you know who the leader of this agency that's been appointed is? Does anybody know who Paula White is?
Is that a man or a woman?
It's a woman. Paula White is an evangelical church leader in the Prosperity Gospel in Florida. If you believe in God and contribute money to God, He will make you rich. Yeah, it sounds stupid, but people actually buy into this. Paula White has been married 3 times, ran around on all of her husbands. She embezzled money from her second husband's company. She's a typical televangelist who basically is not what I would call a paragon of Christian virtue. All right, let's do joys and concerns. The first one I have from Mike is, does anybody know Galen Seiler?
Yeah.
Galen Seiler died, I think, last week. I think he was from El Dorado, but he has a lot of friends in New Madison. And the services were last week, and I guess Derek I didn't hear anything about it, but I think Derek let Mike know. So we are going to light a candle for Derek, or for Galen Seiler's family. His wife Connie is still with us, so that's for Galen. Ukraine, the same thing is going on there. They are, and what is interesting is, like any bully, they threaten people, and then people crawl up to them and try and get forgiveness and try and get favoritism. So the Ukrainians are struggling with how to approach our new president and our new government. He promised the war would be over in one day. That hasn't happened. I've just found out in part of the news, everything that our new government does is transactional. If you give me something, I will give you something. It turns out the Ukraine has tons and tons of base minerals, things that we use in cell phones, cobalt, copper, things that we use in our industry. And it's a question of who controls it, the Russians or the Ukrainians. So that is evidently a factor. This is what this one commentator said, is a factor in whether we support one side or the other, is who's going to pay us the most. Typical. Israel, more hostages have been released. I guess we can go into this is a perfect example. Does anybody know what this is? Netanyahu from Israel was a guest at the White House. He gave President Trump a personal present mounted on a big shaft of wood. This is the present he gave him. This is a gold pager. Why is a gold pager considered an appropriate present? Do you remember a few weeks ago when Hamas, many operatives were killed and wounded, and how they were killed and wounded? The Israelis got control of the company that produces their pagers and walkie-talkies. They put an explosive charge in each one, and then at a certain time on a certain day, a few weeks ago, they set off all the explosions. So anybody that was holding or near to the pager or the walkie-talkie was either killed or maimed. Many, many people were hurt, and many innocent civilians were standing right with these people. They were in stores, they were in restaurants, and to commemorate this, this is a replica of a gold pager that killed tens and hundreds of people in Gaza, given as a present to President Trump. It boggles the mind. This is how far we have sunk as a civilization, to where the symbols of death and destruction are considered an appropriate present for people. And the fact that this is accepted and received with gratitude. And let's go into the next step then. Well, let's finish our joy. Any other joys and concerns? So that's Israel. We're going to light a candle for basically the chaos that is going on now. USAID, which provides food, supplies, humanitarian assistance, vaccines to all over 98 nations in the world, all the funding has been stopped and the program has been canceled. We've been assured by the government that anything that is humanitarian will go through, but that is, once it's stopped, they haven't started it again. So everything is dead in the water. Like we talked about, the food assistance is sitting in docks. Not only here, it's sitting in docks in Tanzania and Nigeria and places like that, unable to move because no one will pay the transport people to move it, and there's no one to distribute it when it gets to the other end and when it gets to the destination. So there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. Vaccines, they turned off the refrigeration unit because nobody paid the electric bill. So vaccines are degrading and going bad, will not be used. Vaccines for polio, vaccines for measles. Just this story goes on and on and on. Any other? So I apologize for bringing this stuff over and over again, but we are living in momentous times. I am tempted to compare it to the Dark Ages, when the Roman Empire fell. The only light of intelligence and science left was in the monasteries, and that was by a few monks. The rest of the nation, the rest of the world, the rest of civilization degenerated into the feudal system where the rich got richer and the poor basically died in the streets. You had the great plagues. Civilization basically was on the verge of dying out, and we are coming to the same situation here. Okay, we'll light this last candle for any of those thoughts and prayers that people have that they've not been able to voice, or maybe they're even unaware of them. For those people who are suffering, basically for the government workers, they were offered a buyout, but the buyout was supposedly they could stay home and not work and be paid till September, but Congress is the one that appropriates the money. If there's no money, they don't get paid, so it very likely is a bait and switch. They'll retire, they'll quit, they won't go to work, and then they won't get paid. There's nothing that will say they'll get paid other than the word of a person whose word is worthless. So these people are all on tenterhooks. They don't know what's going on, all the different areas and divisions that are there. All right. Let me give you a quote. You give a dog shelter, water, food, love, and affection, and it thinks you're God. You give a cat shelter, water, food, love, and affection, and it thinks it's God. That is the definition of a narcissist. A narcissist is a cat. The more you pay attention to it, the more you give it, the more it thinks it's in charge and everything has to go its way. It's not a dog who appreciates and wags its tail and is there for you every day. It's there, the cat is there when it wants to be there and gives you basically nothing in return. Although if you're a cat owner, you know that cats have a way of twisting around your legs and sitting on your lap that makes it worthwhile. What would we call the cat if we had a psychologist nearby? NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. What are the traits? So listen to these as I enumerate them and see what connects with what you see going on in the news. Aggression and sadism, either toward the self or others or both. Paranoia, grandiose fantasies and behaviors such as preoccupation with thoughts of personal success, power, and attractiveness or sex appeal. Little or no empathy for other people's emotions or feelings. A significant need for attention, admiration, and recognition. Chairman of the Kennedy Center. An inflated sense of self-importance, such as a tendency to exaggerate personal talent or achievements. The greatest brain ever, a genius, self-described. A belief in personal specialness and superiority. A sense of entitlement. A tendency to take advantage of others or exploit people for personal gain. Arrogant or conceited behavior and attitudes. A tendency to envy others and believe others envy them. A disruptor, as he has been described by his supporters, is putting it mildly. Some of the more lethal examples we've seen is driving people from their lands in the Middle East. Elon Musk bragged that he was feeding the life-saving USAID International Development Agency into the wood chipper, and yet that was not even the most outrageous event of the week. That honor went instead to Donald Trump and his proposal to just clean out the Gaza Strip by removing its people, bulldozing it, then redeveloping it as the Riviera of the Middle East under permanent U.S. ownership. Permanent U.S. ownership, and what else did he add? Someone else is going to pay for all of this. Where is he going to send? Now there's 2 million people in Gaza. Where are these 2 million people going? He wants them to go to Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, the surrounding Arab countries. Do these countries want the Palestinians? No. Do the Palestinians want to go? No. Why might this still happen? Because the United States supplies the budget for Egypt, for Jordan, for Lebanon. The giant carrot and stick is, if you don't do what we want, we cut off your money, no matter how important it is to the lifeblood of your people. If you don't do, this is the typical bully's action, and we'll go through another list. You can look at Panama. We want the Panama Canal back because the Chinese are running it. The Chinese are not running the Panama Canal. They have ports at each end, but there are other ports besides those two. And then the promulgation, the statement that Panama is going to let our ships go through for free as a bonus, and then Panama says, no, that's not part of the agreement. The treaty for Panama was that Panama is independent and neutral, which means they cannot favor one person over another or one nation over another. Nothing is nailed down. People know about diplomacy. It takes time to work through. Every little detail has to be agreed on. Nothing is said publicly until everybody agrees. That's not the way we're doing things anymore. Things are basically shouted from the rooftops as soon as someone thinks they have a decision, even if it's wrong. And being wrong means nothing now. All right, basically clearing out Gaza, taking all the Palestinians out of Gaza and moving them someplace else and making the Riviera of the Middle East. Does anybody even think there's a chance that that would work? That they would leave, that they would stay gone, that anybody would come to the Gaza Strip as the Riviera of the Middle East? This is a real estate developer's pipe dream that is basically crazy. It's literally crazy. Black History Month. His interpretation, because everybody has to acknowledge, and every president has acknowledged Black History Month, he has acknowledged it and praised Thomas Sowell, Justice Clarence Thomas, and Tiger Woods. None of the historical Black history people that have been celebrated, only the ones that support his ideas and what he wants are the only ones named. Black History Month, the new head of the Armed Services has done what? Canceled any recognition for Black History Month. Canceled any recognition of Martin Luther King Day. Because these are considered DEI, something that woke people do and we will not do anymore. It kind of depends on your definition of what can be considered woke, what can be considered honest appreciation of our history, or what can be considered going back to Jim Crow. He has threatened to cancel any comedy show that criticizes him. The FCC is now investigating KCBS in San Francisco, which is a TV station in San Francisco, because they reported on an ICE raid. They reported on what was happening in an ICE raid, and the FCC has now started an investigation of a TV station for doing something that they did not want done. He has canceled aid to South Africa. They may know why. South Africa now, after apartheid was ended, has a majority black government. There is a program in place with the Afrikaners took all the land and owned it as farmers. There's a program to distribute that land to black farmers. The white farmers are compensated, but of course they're upset losing their thousands and thousands of acres. So now, even though we've stopped refugees from every other country, who has been accepted as a refugee to the United States? A white African who says he's been discriminated against is now on the approved refugee list and can be brought in. I'm sure with a little push from Elon Musk. Prayer breakfast. The National Commission to End Oppression of Christians. That was announced at the prayer breakfast. Paula White is the leader, and Paula White, I told you what her history is, who she is, an evangelical leader from Florida who heads a megachurch and is a believer in the prosperity gospel, which means if you contribute money to the church, you will be rewarded by God. The only way to get rich, and getting rich is fine, there's nothing wrong with getting rich, and that is to contribute money to God, which means to me, Paula White, and then I'll give God what God wants. The EEOC, the Equal Opportunity, Equal Employment, Employment, it was stopped. It was investigating Tesla because black employees at Tesla's Fremont, California manufacturing plant have endured racial abuse, pervasive stereotyping, and hostility, as well as epithets such as the N-word, monkey, boy, and black bitch. They were being investigated. No longer. Elon Musk has shut down the EEOC. No more investigations of illegality. The FBI, this goes on and on. I'm sure you're aware of this. More than 1,000 agents are threatened with job loss. Any agent who is involved in any way in the investigation of January 6th, the insurrection, or the secret documents moved to Mar-a-Lago and refused to return them, any agent, even if they were just doing their job, whose name is on the list, is being fired. That's thousands of FBI agents. Pam Bondi, who is the new Attorney General, has canceled all efforts to stop Russian manipulation of the news. There was an investigation, and there's actually a squad or an agency partition in the FBI to investigate Chinese, Iranian, and Russian news manipulation on Facebook and Instagram. That whole investigation has been shut down and those people reassigned or fired. The FBI, the agents, I talked about that. Where's some more? Well, let me just go through. How many of you have noticed the end zone at the NFL before the Super Bowl game? Do you know what used to be in the end zone? They always had the teams on each end, their logo there. There also was an additional logo that says End Racism. President Trump will be at the Super Bowl. That logo has been erased from the end zone. No longer will it say End Racism. USAID, Trump accused the USAID of financing anti-Trump news shows, which is the USAID doesn't pay for TV stations, it doesn't pay for news. That's a different agency that does that, but it's not the USAID. But curiously, who did get lots of USAID money for personal use? Ivanka Trump is on the list for getting thousands of USAID dollars. 3 billion farm products are not delivered. They're rotting on the pier, and 5,000 workers in 98 countries have been stranded. Polio vaccine, malaria treatments, disease prevention for HIV, the test for HIV, all this stuff has been stopped in its tracks. The vaccines are not being distributed and they're being lost because there's no refrigeration. Russia, Iran, and China are all great approvers of all the moves that have been taken in the last 3 weeks. Our allies all around the world, including the Canadians and the Mexicans, the British, everybody is appalled and cannot believe what is going on. The field has been left, and that's what USAID does. It provides humanitarian treatment. There's big bags of wheat and corn and soybean meal and rice are delivered all over the world with big signs, a present supplied by the American people to help you. No longer will the American people be helping anyone in the world. The only people left to help now will be the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians. WHO, the World Health Organization. We have withdrawn from the World Health Organization. Who stops the spread of different diseases, viruses, HIV? Who's going to stop people with HIV from coming to the United States, even on a visitor's visa? The possibilities for this are they're endless and they're horrific. They're closing the Department of Education with all the good, and you can imagine what the Department of Education, how much that supplies to every school, particularly poor schools, and the investigations and the research that they do. They've closed the Consumer Protection Agency. They fired the head of the National Archives. Why would they fire the head of the National Archives? Because the head of the National Archives asked for the documents that were removed from the White House be returned to the White House. Anyone who does anything of disfavor or not bending a knee is basically fired. The government is being wholesale, basically slashed and burned. The National Institute of Health, they have stopped billions of dollars of trials, of investigation, of research. They've stopped all the medical trials and the research grants. If you were in a medical trial for cancer treatment, for Alzheimer's treatment, where you get your drugs from the government and they try to see which drugs work and which drugs don't, those trials have all been stopped, suspended. No money's being spent. So not only are we losing the research, the people who are getting the benefit of these drugs are left with no more drugs. They're left hanging with no treatment for their cancer, for their heart disease, for their Alzheimer's. They're left and abandoned by our government. The hiring freeze. There's been a nationwide hiring freeze. Who is not going to be hired? Every year in California and the western states, and actually now in the southern states, $15,000 extra, 15,000 extra firefighters are hired for the fire season every year. 15,000 firefighters are hired to fight fires in the rural areas, or even now the urban areas in Los Angeles. There's no money to hire these people anymore. There won't be any extra firefighters this year. Even more, he revoked the security clearance of anybody who was opposed to him. You heard that he revoked the security clearance of President Biden. President Biden doesn't really need a security clearance. He's not really going anywhere, and he doesn't really need to keep up on what's going on. So that's kind of just an insult as a former president that he doesn't like. But he's also revoked the security clearances of Alvin Bragg and Letitia James. Those are the prosecutor and district attorney in New York who prosecuted him. Their security clearances being revoked means they cannot go into a federal courthouse. The prosecutor for the area of New York and the district attorney for the area of New York cannot go into a federal courthouse because their security clearance has been revoked. Just on a whim by someone, a petulant child who is a bully and will take it out on anybody and everybody. That's truly amazing, the stuff that's going on. The CDC, the Center for Disease Control, their publishing has been stopped. Investigation of the bird flu study has been stopped. Why? It showed that raw milk from cows fed to cats gave the cats bird flu. They're wondering if raw milk can give people bird flu. Who's in favor of raw milk? The guy who wants to be the head of the CDC, the health department, Kennedy. So now all of a sudden that study has been stopped. An interesting personal sidelight for here, Ohio was studying veterinarians who treated dairy cattle. They were taking blood samples to see if, when they were exposed to dairy cattle, if they had got bird flu too. The results of that study are blocked. We don't know if any of these veterinarians, and they don't know if they've been exposed to bird flu. He fired most of the Kennedy Center's board, I told you that, and appointed himself chairman or conductor. Oh, also the tariffs on China. Where do we get most of our medical drugs? China. So the price of all the cancer drugs, all the treatment, that's all going to go up. Why is that important? Because they canceled, remember the Biden administration put in the cap on insulin at $35 a month? That's been repealed. Now drug companies can charge whatever they want. This is insane, people. This is truly insane. Here's a few personal examples that just get under my skin. How many of you are aware of Kash Patel, the guy who will be head of the FBI? He was paid $25,000 by the Russians to make an anti-FBI documentary 2 years ago. He will now be the head of the FBI. They also showed his financial disclosure papers. He has $5 million in stock in the Elite Depot Corporation. That is the Chinese fast food fashion brand Shein, which has fallen under bipartisan criticism for the use of forced labor. And that's Muslims in the forced labor with the Muslims in Mongolia and Afghanistan. That's the Uyghur, if you're familiar with Kyrgyzstan. That is a country in China, between China, Mongolia, and Afghanistan. But he has $5 million in stock in a company that exploits those people. Just one more example, Darren Beatty was a high-level appointee to the State Department. He lost his job as a speechwriter because it turned out he attended a national white nationalist conference and spoke there. Then in October of last year, he wrote, "Competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work." He is now the State Department's Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs. Another guy was hired by Doge and then fired. He turns out his little statements, his name is Elise, his statements was, "You could not pay me to marry outside my ethnicity." The same month, he tweeted, "Normalize Indian hate." And that's not Indian American Indian, that's Indian Indians from the East, noting the prevalence of people from India and Silicon Valley. Vice President Vance is married to who? Usha Vance is an Indian American. She's from Indian. Vance came to his defense, even though the guy said, "I would not marry anybody who wasn't of my faith and my race," and that Indians are way too prevalent in our country. It's just, last summer he tweeted, "I was racist before it was cool," and he also tweeted, "I would not mind at all if Gaza and Israel were both wiped off the face of the earth." This guy is a public speaker for the United States of America. Comments, this could go on and on. I just blown away. Every time I tried to finish something, there was something new popped up, so. And this is not something we should be talking about in church, but we need to be aware of this. We have to be knowing what's going on. All right, comments? All right. We are going to the offering. If you have something to share, please do. If you do not have anything, or if you need something, let us know. And we're going to hear "There Is More Love Somewhere." 7, we are going to sit at the welcome table. Hallelujah. Gospel tunes. I love the gospel tunes, but I have to say, whoever wrote this never went to a black church. Because one thing they have is fancy style. They really like to dress up, and I actually am part of that. I still wear a tie, although nobody else does, but it's still, that is, if you've never been to a black church for Sunday, that is an experience and a half. It is fun. They get into it. They sing with all their might, and they enjoy it. So, okay, this is another one I just had to put in here. This will be if I ever get to the combination of Germany, and there is no question in my mind what this means. This is not an idle gesture. This is what he really believes. He is a South African, and that's where that came from. All right, this also will be in their project in 1938 and project in 2025. In 38, they were loaded on train cars. In 2025, they're loaded on planes, and basically military planes. And we'll talk about Project 2025 as we go along. Our last thing, I have to have something about horses, so I think I've shown you this before. This is Super Bowl Sunday, so you got to have the Clydesdales. And the sentiment we will never forget, that's for 9/11. For me, it's also January 6th. And the sentiment that of the Clydesdales bowing their heads in reverence to this country and the freedom we enjoy, we will never forget. And we will continue on with that. So, our postlude, My Funny Valentine. Valentine's Day is coming up. The coffee's on, so it should be ready shortly.
I think
And
your
donuts
camera,
donuts for Fresh Friday.
I think your camera's about ready to fall off there.
Yes, it looks
One of the
like.
legs, which I don't know, that might destroy it.
They're
I noticed that when I took my.
they're like Timex. They can take a licking and keep on.
Oh, okay, well,
Taking. All right. All right, that ends our service for New Madison. Hope you have a good week. If you need anything, let us know. And if you know of anybody who has problems, let us know. And we're still working on our sound system, so I'll see if I can get the headphones figured out here.
I can hear you better sitting here.
Oh, okay. You can hear a little bit? Good, because I thought about coming down, because I don't mind speaking down there, because I don't really use my notes, but I can't change the slides from down there. So if that works better, let's keep on doing that. But I'm still going to work. I think the headphones, I had them working once, and they really work good because they drowned out everything from every place else, and they amplify in both ears, but I couldn't get them to connect for some reason, so we'll get it figured out. All right. Enjoy the week. Have a fresh donut. And we'll keep our candle lit as we usually do for Galen and his family and his wife, Connie.
I know he suffered a long time.
Yeah, Mike said he had some real health problems.
Yeah. I used to work, he worked down at Eaton for
Oh, did he?
a long time, yeah. He was on the quality of life Eaton. I think he retired maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe.
There's that's what I keep trying to tell people is communities, you know, people that know people and support people, even if they don't go to church together. That's what's important.
Well, I hadn't heard that he had passed away. I didn't see anything in the papers or anything.
Yeah, there's hardly any people left.
Well, yeah.
And that's the other thing that's dividing us all up is there's no standard communication.
Yeah.
It used to be you watched ABC, CBS, or NBC.
Yeah.
Everybody watched it, Walter Cronkite, and you trusted them to be honest.
Right.
And now these people watch Fox News and they just lie to them.
They believe it all,
They just suck it in, and they don't believe you when you tell them, and you even give them citations, go look at this, go look at that. We're divided like but the thing is, there's these people, I mean, when you look at a guy like that, the stuff he does, how cruel and nasty that it is. And support that. I mean, to me, he's like the Antichrist. He is releasing all the evil forces. Every person is good and bad. And he's releasing he's encouraging us to be bad instead of being good.
Well, they were showing something on the local news the other night about a bunch of Nazis on some overpass Interstate 75 or something.
And they're coming out in public. Because, there's good and there's bad. I mean,
it's like any public event you're having now, you're going to have a crowd boys show up or rifles.
Springfield is just.
All these people
They're not thinking, but they're going to find out because he's cutting Medicaid. He's cutting.
It's going to start hitting people's pocketbooks.
Eggs are $7 a dozen.
All we heard through the election was the economy. He's not doing a damn thing.
He's making it
except for the rich people.
He's canceled all these people that get insulin for $35 a day. They're going to go back to paying $400. And these are the people that voted for him. The farmers that still support him. Even though farm income now.
China's going to stop taking our farm exports.
There's like $5 to $10 billion a year on foreign aid. All that rice, all that wheat, all those soybeans, that's American farmers produce that. That's all done. They aren't going to sell it anymore. And on the other side, we import our fertilizer, potash, and all that stuff comes from Canada. If they put a tariff on that, the fertilizer costs are going to go up. Their sales prices are going to go down. They're going to get caught in the squeeze. It's just. And Musk, I don't understand. He just canceled the electrification thing where they put up the charging poles for electric cars. The government was sponsoring that. He canceled all that. So if you have an electric car, it's harder to charge it. And Musk says he's a great businessman. He bought Twitter and ran it into the ground. It's just. That's what I say. I think the whole world's going crazy. And it's really hard to keep your sanity in the middle of it, like being in the middle of a hurricane and trying to stay calm and positive. And it's pretty hard to be positive because every day it's just. I was up last night like midnight adding new stuff in because new stuff was coming out.
What scares me is they got into the damn treasury department, in the payment system and everything. They've got all these. He's got 20-year-old kids in there playing around with
19-year-old
kids. It's like. Are we going to be able to file our taxes? Are we going to get our tax refunds? Are we going to get our social security checks? I mean, it's. And
he's taking billions of dollars with his SpaceX and all that. He's on the government payroll. And he's in there. But it's the same thing as Trump, as a real estate guy, saying, I'm going to make $1 billion on the Riviera of the Middle East. That's exactly what he does.
That's what his thinking is.
He throws more people out, builds a big casino, doesn't pay anybody for the work, takes the profits, and then goes bankrupt and then pays any bills. I mean, that's not a great business person. It's just, pardon my rant and rave.